Contingency plan for a construction project. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about why you must have schedule contingency and schedule buffers, and why you must have contingency planning in all that you do. And if you're into that and you want to see the different details step by step and the approach that you can take it, then you've definitely come to the right place, because everybody needs a contingency plan. So let me talk to you about how this process works. So let's start out. When you're planning your project, number one, you will want to have a macro level takt plan. That means you have your start date, that means you have your end date, and that means each of the phases are listed out in a rhythm according to phase, and all of the phases are tied together so that you can hit your end date, which is going to be your substantial completion. Each of these activities will have one-offs within it, and they will have logic ties, or what we call interdependence ties, throughout. You'll be able to see this overall total project plan in its entirety on one page, because this is a schedule or production plan A3. And it's really crucial that you use what's called the Takt calculator. So this Takt calculator is on the leantakt.com website under the Excel template, and it's also on the software in Takt. It links you right to it. But we have in the actual calculator different zoning strategies that will put you in either a macro, which is your contractual promise, or what's called a norm strategy, and this is your target. So think of your macro like you're going to get married. So I'll just draw a wedding ring right here. You're making a promise. Your norm is your target. This is actually what you want to hit. So this is the promise, this is the target. So when you create your macro level takt plan, it's going to say, hey, this is the slowest speed. That's really important. This is what it will take to build the project. This end date should not only represent your path of critical flow as you go through here, but it should also represent what you need for your reference class. And then I'm going to cover risks here in just a second. Okay, so just want you to know that your promise, this is your contractual end date in your macro level takt plan. You came up with this date by putting together the plan, identifying your path of critical flow, and making sure that you are within this macro level zoning range at your slowest speed, and that gives you your end date. Now, this is really exciting to me. The reason that you're doing this is so that then you can create later your norm level takt plan. So I'll put an M here for macro and an N here for norm. Okay, so check this out. Let's just take one phase. You will do a pull plan with your trade partners, okay? When you do that pull plan, if you do it the way we teach in our other videos, which I'll link you to that pull planning video in the description below, but if you do it the way we teach you to do it, you'll have a pull plan, and you'll be able to create what's called a norm level production plan. And before I draw this, I want to show you what happens. We are going to switch from our conservative zoning strategy to an aggressive zoning strategy. And in case you're like, Jay Money, what are you talking about? Remember, I always draw this. If you have two crews and two zones, right? Zone number one, zone number two, and you just switch that to 4 zones, same amount of work, same labor, same everything, but you switch it to 4 zones. That means you have half the duration here, right? So that's going to start to look like this. And then when you add this second activity to it, that's going to be halved as well. And you have a different end date, right? So rezoning pulls your project closer. So the reason I'm talking to you about this is because by the time you do your pull plan and choose a new zoning strategy, you will be able to gain buffers for your contingency planning. So the path of critical flow, I'm going to draw it in blue to just show that it's different. But when you come up with your norm level zoning strategy, your path of critical flow will look something like this, right? And it will start to incline, and it will provide you an earlier duration, right? It'll pull this forward. Okay, so if I was going to draw that, and I'll do my best, you might still have some of the early activities, but the next zone is optimized as well, right? Then we get down here to the interiors, and you've gotten a smaller zone size. Your exteriors, you've gotten a smaller zone size. Your commissioning is looking better. It's all tied together, right? And we have this time, this is such a good video. I just love this. Okay, then you have this time at the end. And so I'll draw it in red because that's what it really should be. But you have your path of critical flow, right? And it comes all the way to the end, but you have this buffer here, which I'm going to mark with a B. It sounds like a children's song. But anyway, that buffer is there specifically to cover risks. So remember I said your overall macro, this overall macro should represent your plan. It should represent your slowest speed. And I'll just write that down. And it should represent your reference class. And the reference class is the reference of historical projects that say this is the amount of time that you must have to complete this project, okay? But you have another one called risks. We want to make sure that your overall total project duration has enough time to overcome your risks. And so you do a risk analysis. Oh my gosh, this is so good. So analysis, and once you do your risk analysis, you will know how many buffers you need to cover that. And so that's when you do your norm level strategy from the pull plan, right? Your pull plan with the right number of zones, pulling it forward, like I said before, you'll now have buffers, and those buffers had better cover your risks. Now you're covered. Now you don't have to irresponsibly surprise the owner. Now you don't have to freak out. You have a contingency plan, and you can really flow. One of the key things that's, I think, paradoxical or like counterintuitive is that it's not rushing and pushing and panicking that make projects go well. It's make ready, preparations, planning, and working on a flow. So if you have some buffer to cover your risks, and you already had a duration that was your slowest speed and accommodated your reference class, and you've made this as a promise to the owner, you're set. Now there are some other things that can pull your project forward. Number one, and I'll go ahead and mark these in red, is if you have like let's say a major problem or a slowest trade or a slowest zone, these are bottlenecks. You can literally well in advance, because you've created this plan early enough, you can design, fabricate, and deliver differently to support these bottlenecks and narrow them. So finding your constraints and designing to the work package, obviously we've already talked about rezoning, but one of the best things that you can do is never need this buffer through proper planning and implementing the last planner system. But the biggest point in this whole discussion is you must have buffers to absorb any possible risks. You must have that as a contingency plan. Now I'll tell you one other thing that I really liked, and I learned this in the 33 strategies of war, is that, hey, you have your base plan and you have your plan to execute and go faster. Let's say we're looking at this phase. Every phase must have a plan A, B, C, D, and we have to get ahead of it and make sure that we're always doing pull planning 3 months ahead, pre-construction planning or having the meeting 3 weeks ahead, that we're aligning the supply chain to the activity with buffers, and that we're always doing look ahead and weekly work planning out ahead to find and remove roadblocks. Now I got taught this, although Napoleon ended up tanking his life and his career, he was a military genius, and he used to literally pour himself over maps, and when he was planning his campaigns would have plan A, B, C, D, E, F, so that when the enemy, who has a vote in this scenario, like Jocko Willink says, counterattacks, they were able to switch to contingency plans. So have contingency and buffers here for unknowns. Contingency is for unknown risks, buffers are for known risks, right? And make sure that every individual activity has different permutations of the plan so that you have contingencies built within the work package itself. And so never be caught without buffers, never be caught without contingency planning. In fact, I love this topic so much, we're going to put this into a Canva graphic. We're going to convert it to a blog post as well so that it will show up on the internet and can be referenced. And I will also link you to the book, Elevating Pre-Construction Planning, which talks about how to do this in detail, and the book, Takt Planning. I know you'll love them, but here's the key. Please check it out and reach out to us in the comments and like and subscribe. please. If you love this content, because I know this is going to help, everybody deserves some contingency. On we go.